Hey everyone, Amia here from Resonance Astrology and welcome to my channel. And if you're new here, hi, welcome to my channel. We're back again with the weekly overviews, this time looking at the week from March 17th to March 23rd of 2025. And first of all, how has the eclipse been to you guys? What has been going on? This has been such a head-heavy eclipse in the sign of Virgo. And in my life, this has been happening in the 11th house for me. So it has really kind of amplified the way that I interact with communities which you are part of and just like the Astro fam community and everything. And a funny thing about all of this is I filmed this video yesterday and I was honestly just so unhappy with the whole process and everything that happened that I decided to refilm this video today because I just felt that intuitively I cannot upload this video in a good consciousness and I just need to redo this. So this is what has been going on in my life, and I don't know how it's been for you, but the past few years, and I'm not sure if this is because Mercury has been retrograde in my secondary progress chart, but I'm filming this video today as Mercury has stationed retrograde. And the retrogrades, honestly, for me, often feel like the calmer period of the whole retrograde cycle. The pre-shadow period of Mercury often in my life feels much more chaotic, and especially a week prior to Mercury turning retrograde and mostly the 2 to 3 days before, so again would be something like from Wednesday onwards, was honestly much more chaotic for me. So many rescheduling, so many appointment cancellations, things that I have ordered, shipping being delayed, all of that happening. Literally the quintessential Mercury retrograde shenanigans. And now Mercury has stationed retrograde and I already feel a lot calmer with everything. And this is why I'm also redoing this video, because I feel like yesterday I was just too hectic and it has really made me rethink of how I want to show up with this channel and how I want to create my YouTube videos, because there's obviously so much room for improvement for me to make. And all of this is happening in my 6th house. Aries rules my 6th house. And so it has really been changing my relationship, which Venus is also retrograde in my 6th house, my relationship to work and how I want to show up at work, how I want to speak at work. And again, there's so much room and improvement to make. And I think that's also a perfect example, because depending on where Venus and Mercury have been or are going retrograde in your chart, it might be changing the relationship you have to that part of your chart. So it might not always be romantic relationships. In my case, it's my work relationship that is currently very much changing. If Mercury and Venus have been retrograde in your 9th house, if Aries rules your 9th house, it might be changing the way you have a relationship towards your spiritual beliefs and religion, something like that, or the way you view the world. If Venus and Mercury have been retrograde in your 5th house, it might be changing your relationship towards your creativity and how you put out things. So a lot of the ways that Venus retrograde can affect our relationships might be based on the house topics, not so much the romantic one-on-one relationships, unless you are, of course, a Libra rising, in which case all of this has been going on in your 7th house, which is totally amplifying the themes of the other person. But now that Mercury retrograde has stationed retrograde, I feel a lot calmer in my body and my nervous system, to be completely honest. And yesterday evening, I was really rethinking, how do I want to show up at work? And I have been watching a few YouTube videos and it really brought me back and reminded me of why did I want to start this and how do I want to continue in the long term? And there was one channel that I saw that he was essentially critiquing other channels and giving them tips and everything. And it was like in this really super professional way of, oh, you need better lighting, you need to speak better, you need to make better cuts, you need to be professional, you need to wear a better shirt, and otherwise people won't take you serious in your expertise and all of that. And then I saw another video of one person that he was interviewing her, and essentially what he was saying, or she was saying, was that she is really aiming to be authentic and not do so many cuts. And this is kind of also what I am really aiming to do. My main astrology teacher has been Adam Ellenboss from Untitled Astrology. If you know his channel, you know what type of videos he does. He is such a good speaker and he has always been an aspiration to me of how I really want to do my content. Obviously, I'm miles away. I'm not yet that good at speaking. I constantly make mistakes. My speech and especially my brain function in 3 different languages. So the way that my brain works is often that I just speak the words that come into my head in the first language that they kind of pop up. And there's a lot of idioms or sayings, I guess, which I translate wrong or from the language into another language, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I'm really trying to work on improving my speech, and hopefully eventually I will be able to do my videos without having to edit them so much, because I also want to come off across much more natural, and I want this videos to really feel like we are coming together. And especially the weekly overviews, I really want them to feel like something that you come together with your BFF or something like that, and I'm here talking to you how you can improve the week and what is awaiting you in the week ahead. So this is kind of what I really wanted to feel like, and that you can sit down and we can both drink a cup of tea or something. Also, look at this lovely teacup. I got this in Scotland on Isle of Skye in a beautiful pottery literally 2 years ago. I was there 2 years ago, so cheers. And so this is kind of what I wanted to feel like. So as you can see in my life, and this is also always what I want to remind people of and make people aware, is that transits happen in our life stories. So this is why I plan on incorporating more life stories, just to make it more personal, and that you can also think, oh, how is this showing up in my life? Because for me, this is really the essence of astrology, is the stories and how the planets are showing up in those stories that we have in our lives. So let me know in the comments down below, how has this Virgo eclipse been affecting you, and how have Venus and Mercury retrograde been showing up in your life? And how are you feeling the switch from Mercury turning retrograde? Because again, for me, it feels much calmer now. When Mercury is retrograde, it feels like the eye of the storm, so everything is much more settled, and really the pre-shadow phase a few days before feels the most chaotic for me. So let me know if you have been having similar feelings towards this, or if this has been your life experience with Mercury retrograde as well. And again, Mercury retrograde periods can be a wonderful time to sit back and reflect more and go more inwards, and so necessary. This is why I really don't understand the Mercury retrograde hate, because if we wouldn't have Mercury going retrograde every few months, we wouldn't have the time to sit down and reflect on things. And if we are not sitting down and reflecting on things, oof, our lives would be so much chaotic, and we really need these periods where we are rethinking where we want to head and go to. And I also love that the Mercury retrograde is falling into the sign of Aries, which is known to be such an impulsive sign, and Aries often can speak before they think. So I think this period is going to be really important to think before we speak. But now let's get into the weekly overview, and I'm doing this a bit different. And also, if you haven't noticed, I'm back in my background, because for once I love the new background, but the problem there is that, like, the tapestry, it's in the living room. I don't have good lighting there, so it's only really good if there is good lighting outside, and the lighting has not been good outside. There have been a lot of rainy and foggy days here again in Switzerland, so not the best lighting there. So this is why I'm back here in the office studio kind of. But you know, this is also not the best long-term solution, because this freaking paravan I carry every time from my room into this room. This is why it's always set up differently, because I have to set it up anew every day. So it's not the best long-term solution, but I am working with what I have. And I'm also having notes here. I think it's so much more useful, because I want to give you useful and conciseful advice. I don't know if conciseful is a word, actually, to be completely honest. See, this is the perfect example of like me switching the words up in my brain and and saying I invented so many words you wouldn't believe. I invented so many words in different languages because my brain kind of translates things in a weird way sometimes. And don't even get me started on the numbers. I constantly say the numbers completely wrong, because in German we say the numbers when we say 52, essentially we would say 25, right? We say it opposite. And then in Croatian, you say the same as in English. And it's just every time I'm like, let me say it right. And then I mess it up. So yeah. Anyhow, I have my notes here and I want to give you concise advice. And things, and I think it's just better, because if I'm doing too much free flow, it tends to get all over the place. I have my Mercury in Sag. I tend to get all over the place, and I tend to easily get into the realm, oh my gosh, see, I can't pronounce the words correct, into the realm of philosophizing. So bear with me. I have to, for my own sake, do things more concise for me and put in notes, because otherwise things will be all over the place. And we are doing this on Saturn Day, by the way, and this is why I have my lovely Saturn earrings and Saturn necklace with me. This is how I honor the planets. I don't have jewelry for all the planets, but I like to dress according to the planetary days and put in some jewelry if I have jewelry to honor the planets. And today is Saturday, so Saturn Day, so this is how I am honoring the planet Saturn. Okay, now let's get to the actual weekly overview. So on Monday, we have the Sun conjunct the North Node in Pisces. And for me, this is really amplifying the themes and the story. It's kind of like the continuation of the Virgo eclipse that we have had the past week, because for the eclipses to happen, they always involve the sun and the moon, right? And so basically, the next eclipse that we are having will be in the sign of Aries, which will be an out of sign eclipse. So we are not having a Pisces eclipse this time. And I think the sun conjoining the North Node in the sign of Pisces is kind of the closest we are getting to that ecliptic feeling. So I feel like it's really this continuation. But the sun also has a lot to do with purpose and growth. So I think it's really putting us into this new direction in personal development and kind of inclining us towards the more Piscean themes, because the North Node has to do with increase. So we're always kind of following the North Node in a sense, or at least that's what we are getting turned on to go towards, so to say. And the Piscean themes is obviously more intuitive, more in the flow, more artistic, more imaginative, more adaptable, going with the flow, more compassionate. And when the North Node is at play, often fated events seem to be happening, and we are obviously in the midst of eclipse season, in the eclipse portal in between. And so if you're meeting some sort of solar figure in your life, which could be somebody that is helpful for you towards your new life path and endeavor and where you want to head, this is probably the time that you might be meeting such people. So have a lookout for Monday if you meet somebody that is kind of falling into that route of leading you towards that new life path. These connections you're making during that time might be super important. And then on Tuesday, on Wednesday, we don't have any super significant transits. And then on Thursday, we have Sun conjunct Neptune in the sign of Pisces, amplifying these themes even more. But I do also want to mention something briefly. Because I know, or I at least see it in my statistics, a lot of my audience, a lot of you watching me are from the US, and everything I'm telling you is based from my time zone, so Central European time zone. So sometimes, because most of y'all are around 8 hours behind me, a lot of transits will happen sooner for you. And this Sun conjunct Neptune is a perfect example, because here in Switzerland, it's happening on Thursday, but like just after midnight. So barely passing Wednesday. But because y'all are ahead, backwards, y'all are not ahead, I'm ahead, but you're 8 hours behind me with the time, it is happening in Wednesday where you are probably living. So just in case you're maybe confused, or you hear other astrologers talk about events in a different time frame, it might be the issue of the time zone difference. So I just wanted to clear that and get that out of the way. Everything I say is based on Central European time zone. And so again, on Thursday, we have the Sun conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and the Sun moves into the sign of Aries, which is the spring equinox. The spring equinox is happening, the astrological new year is happening, the start of Aries season. So we are beginning the new astrological year. And again, the themes of imagination and transcendence are being even more amplified with Sun and Neptune, and there might be even greater impulses towards spiritual discovery and redemption. A call to like a higher and more selfless purpose. Neptune and the Sun, but especially in the sign of Pisces, can often have this like personification of wanting to do this selfless spiritual work, kind of almost a monk-like persona where it's like, I just want to let God work through me. I want to be so selfless that I completely take out my ego and I just let God take the lead. So this is like a theme that could be amplified in your life. And obviously, there can also be a tendency towards self-deception and escapism, and the shadow side of that is kind of using spirituality an excuse to face your real life, because there are people that can use the excuse of going to monastery and being a monk or a nun or something as an excuse to kind of not really face real life. And, you know, it's really easy to be in this spiritual loving space when you don't have the past people and events and things that trigger you in the outside world around you all the time. So be careful for such tendencies to yourself. And again, Sun Neptune can easily be deceptive towards yourself. So make sure you are not deceiving yourself in the way that you are kind of actually escaping your real life and using spirituality and evolvement as some sort of excuse to not be real and present and actually take responsibility in how you're creating your life. And what else do we have here? Obviously, again, because the North Node is super close by and we are in the midst of the eclipse portal, things like synchronicities and events that we feel are fated or karmic can be super heightened during that time. So watch out for that. And I mean, in the sign of Pisces, there are just so often synchronicities and things that are happening, which because Pisces is so cryptic, and this is why synchronicities are kind of associated with the sign of Pisces, and why also Mercury is in its fall in Pisces, but I mean, it's a very mild fall in form. I think it's just a different language that Pisces often speaks in an archetypal way, and again, it's this much more cryptic language, which is hard to understand. And this is why Mercury doesn't do so well, because Mercury has to do with logic and thinking, and Pisces has to do with imagination and figuring out the symbolic language of dreams often. This is why dreams are kind of associated with Pisces, but also very associated with Neptune and like just the symbolism of things, because what happens if you go out and walk and on my daily walks, I'm just thinking of like a personal example. What happens is synchronicities happen. And what are synchronicities? Essentially things that have patterns and they make sense to you, but it might not make so much sense to other people. And especially because your synchronicities might be different to my synchronicities. For me, seeing a hedgehog might have a completely different meaning than you seeing a hedgehog on your walk. So I think this is also why Mercury doesn't really do so well in the sign of Pisces. And yeah, so this is what I have for Sun conjunct Neptune. And well, I also wrote here that there can be a lack of self-direction, but I do also think this is very kind of amplified by the fact that Mercury and Venus are in retrograde right now. And I do think we are going to get a boost when the sun moves into the sign of Aries, because here the sun is exalted and we are starting the astrological new year, spring equinox. And again, from a northern hemisphere side of things, which a lot of astrology is based on here, the sun has its exaltation in the sign of Aries because we are entering the light of the light part of the year. So the days officially get longer again than the nights, and the sun takes over, so to say. And this is why the sun is exalted in the sign of Aries and does extremely well there, because it's also so assertive in going and heading towards that life path and creating that life. It's really this rebirth moment. And see, this is also an interesting thing if we go to my other language that I speak, which is German or Swiss German. Not the exact same language, by the way. We can understand the Germans. The Germans can't really understand us, but yeah. But we call the sign of Aries, we call it Vidar. And rebirth in our language is called Wiedergeburt. It's not exactly the same way that you write Vidar, like it's really not exactly the same, but from the tonality of how you say it, it sounds very similar. Vidar, Wiedergeburt, right? So I think it's so interesting that in the German language you kind of have it in the like the way that you say Aries is in the form of rebirth. So it really feels like a rebirthing moment here for the sign of Aries and the spring equinox. It feels even more prominent. And so the sun moving into the sign of Aries will definitely and most certainly give us a boost in being more proactive despite the Venus and Mercury retrograde, as already mentioned. And it will definitely disrupt the Piscean themes. But both Aries and Piscean themes are so prominent this month, and we will likely go back and forth between them. So, back and forth between feeling adventurous, bold, assertive, and courageous to create and develop new things in our lives versus the more Piscean themes, which are going back to the realms of dreams and imagination and intuiting our next visions, going with the flow and the emotional cryptic side of life. So we need the proper image in the sign of Pisces, because it all starts from our imagination, and after we have this image that we want to follow, then we can go after it. And this is kind of what happens in the sign of Aries. And with the retrogrades going on, I think it is just amplifying in our own lives this theme of let's go back. I think we need a better image that we should follow, especially when it comes to Venusian themes, which are relationships and our values in our lives and how we want to pursue those. And Mercury, just what is a better way of thinking about certain things? How can our thinking influence our reality in a different way? And then on Friday, we have Venus retrograde in Aries, sextiling Pluto in Aquarius, and we already had this transit happening. Now is the second hit, and then when Venus stations direct again, she's going to have a third hit, but now we are in the second part of the story. So this is also kind of basically Venus and Pluto together. They are in a sextile relationship transit right now, aspectual. Basically, the aspect they are forming is a sextile. Okay, now I said it right. And so sextiles aren't like the most prominent aspects, but I do still think it's worthwhile talking about it because Venus and Pluto together can have this tendency to be really deep and intense and passionate and have this urge to regenerate relationships. So this might actually be a time where you feel like, or somebody from your past feels like, they want to reignite a flame in your relationships. So look out on the day for exes coming back, people wanting to restart relationships with you, or you wanting to reignite a flame in a dead relationships. Again, just caution here, because this transit, Venus-Pluto, can easily turn obsessive and drive sort of possessive feelings of jealousy, and that is not love. If you're feeling these feelings towards someone like you have to have them, that is not really love. So yeah, keep that in mind if some sort of partner or ex is coming back into your life, or if a relationship that has been developing recently is kind of igniting this feelings of I need to possess this person, I need to have them, then everything will be okay. And it's like, no, wait a second, hold back. Venus is still retrograde. We might not be sure where this is heading, and it might be more like a lust instead of love type of situation. And it can also be a crisis moment if you are in an existing romantic relationships, which can then lead to deeper intimacy. If you're single, it can also just be your own crisis moments towards relationships, which again, as I already mentioned before, can be different depending on which area of your life Aries is falling into your chart, so which house it is ruling. So yeah, can definitely be an energy towards crisis leading to a deeper relation intimacy within you and a partner or another thing in your life. Then on Saturday, we have the third quarter moon in Capricorn. And this for me is also just continuing the energy of the Virgo eclipse, which was opposing Saturn when Saturn had the Cazimi with the sun. So it was like this kind of death moment for Saturn that was going on. And we had this last week. And this is important because obviously Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So whatever theme has been dying for us in that way, now we might get this boost of being more realistic and proactive as well to really set our boundaries. Because most likely with the Virgo eclipse, the themes of where we have been self-sacrificial and where we have been investing too much time into other people instead of ourselves, kind of now is getting more clear on where we have to hold back and really set those boundaries so it's not hurting us, so that we can be in service to other people without it hurting us and without it completely depleting our own cup. And I think with Saturn, knowing what you don't want can be far more powerful instead of knowing what you do want. Like a clear, concise no with Saturn is a full sentence. And sometimes the no of Saturn can lead you to the yes. And again, it's just important to know what we don't want, because sometimes knowing what we don't want can lead us to clearly or gain more clarity in knowing what we actually do want. And I think this is just very true for Saturn and might be the theme that comes up in your life with the third quarter moon in the sign of Capricorn on Saturday. And then on Sunday, to end this week, we have the Sun Venus Cazimi in the sign of Aries. And we also have the Sun in Aries sextiling Pluto in Aquarius as well. And this is a very, very important turning point in the Venus retrograde synodic cycle with the Sun. Because just like Saturn last week, Venus is sort of getting a death and rebirth moment as well. And the part for Venus is that when she forms a Cazimi with the Sun in her retrograde motion is when she slowly gets into this transformative mode of then turning into a morning star. So she really begins this process of where she is fully in her descent and then slowly regaining back her power. So this first part of the Venus retrograde have been wildly different than the second part we are getting in the Venus retrograde. And this is also really the halfway mark of the Venus retrograde cycle. And I really love that she is doing this with the Sun in Aries, because I think it's really giving her this boost of and power to follow up with the vision that she can then perfect once she re-enters the sign of her exaltation in Pisces a week later. And again, as I already mentioned, this will wildly turn around the Venus retrograde cycle, and all the themes that have been coming up are kind of reaching this point of culmination right now. And I also really like that the Sun is sextiling Pluto just after, because I feel like it really encourages us to make the necessary steps and to alchemize this process, which we have been undergoing with the Venus retrograde. And Sun Pluto are amazing to deal and face essentially our shadows and our egos. So I think an important reminder that I have been telling a lot of people during this Venus retrograde cycle, especially while Venus is still in the sign of Aries, is that if you are losing people, and not just people, or things, jobs, whatever, are falling out of your life because you are being more bold and authentic and assertive, that is a good loss. You've won. If you are not losing yourself, you've won. The worst thing that can happen right now is that you are losing yourself, and you definitely don't want to lose yourself. And a good way to establish a good relationship to yourself is by facing your shadow side. So once again, perfect for Sun sextile Pluto, because by being authentic, that is the only way that we can actually really build our dream life. So we really need that. And this is what is going to happen again once Venus re-enters Pisces next week. We are back towards building our dream life. And I think this is like this reminder where it's sort of like you have to be yourself or you'll die. And a big part of that process is to face the shadow self. because you can only fully be yourself if you accept yourself fully. Duh. And so, like, how can we expect others to love, accept, and celebrate us when we are not loving, celebrating, and accepting ourselves? And I mean, not just the good parts. I really mean the difficult and harsh parts about ourselves, often the parts that are filled with shame and guilt. And this transit with Pluto can often kind of make this shame and guilt-filled parts come to the surface so we can face them, okay? A sextile is a positive aspect. It's a Venus-ruled aspect, so it has to do with relations. And in this case, it really has to do with the relationship we have towards ourselves, because this is the sun, to our parts, our internal parts. So I really love how we are ending this week, because the next week is filled with much more craziness. Honestly, I think maybe the most intense and crazy week of March, but intense and crazy, again, crisis moments are always an opportunity to have more deeper and intimate relationships with yourself or the people around you. Like, crisis moments can be so beneficial to turn things around into your life. So don't be like scared of the fact that everything is kind of crazy right now. I think it's a very good opportunity. It's just us. We decide if we take that opportunity or not. And yeah, this is it for this week. I will put up a video next week of like survival tips and guides for the Eclipse and Aries season. This is why I was also kind of like, should I say this now or not? Because this video kind of will be filled with a lot of tips on how you can ground yourself better. So, because these are intense times and we need tools and skills to be in the present moment as much as we can. So I really want to be helpful and useful to you and create this video of like kind of like a survival guide right now. So this is coming up next week, and I will also be releasing the 10th house episode next week. So stay tuned for that. This is happening at the beginning of the week. The survival guide will be up mid next week, and then by the end of the week, I think I might make a video more in depth about the Venus-Sun Cazimi part. And yeah, this is basically it. And this video has been super long, and I hope I have been able to, I think hopefully bring in a bit more authenticity into my videos, because this is really what I'm hoping for. And at the end of the day, I want to sit here and be here in a calm way and feel like I'm also just talking to a friend and giving you information on how to handle this crazy little life we have. So if you have found this video useful, if you have enjoyed it so far, please leave a thumbs up. It helps out more than you know. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I swear, subscribe is also a word I cannot pronounce right. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated for weekly updates, a lot of in-depth planetary transits where I love to make long-form content, and other spiritual content that I will also upload gradually. And again, also a lot of fun podcast episodes. So make sure to subscribe and also share this video if you found it useful with somebody else that might find it useful. And yeah, this is it I have for this week. Astrology from March 17th to March 23rd. Let me know how you have been feeling, guys. I'm super happy to read the comments, and I wish you all a lovely week ahead. Bye, guys.